This is episode 9 in a series that we're doing on biblical worldview. Today, we're going to talk about the first stage of sanctification. What did God intend when he presented himself as a father over all of creation? What it means to grow up actually as a creation under the Creator. All of that and more, we're calling this today, Naked and Not Ashamed. It's the life that we were always meant to be. It's the life of a true son of God where your identity is not found in your failures, but it's found in following Christ. Enjoy.
Well, hello and welcome to the Kavod Family Podcast. I'm Justin Bohner. We got Casey Wilson and Travis Shook. We're on the first of a 4-part long series on the 4 pillars. I think we're on the forging pillar.
Dude, I like this.
Yeah.
Well done. Well
Mix
done.
It up a little bit. You didn't say anything. You didn't say howdy. How are you, gentlemen?
Well, I was actually writing down the title that you had come up with 4.
Yeah. Trying to catch you off guard a little bit.
Kool-Aid, man.
Well done.
All
Well
right, you
done.
can have it back now.
Yeah, my name is Casey Wilson, and it's good to be on the show. Thank you, Justin.
Hey, glad to have you.
What do you got for us today?
Well, we're on the first episode of the 3rd pillar, which is forging, which is all about how we as men go through the actual sanctification process, how he changes us from glory to glory, how we go from failures to successes, moment by moment, day by day, situation by situation. And again, we're running and rinsing this all through this grid of creation, fall, redemption, restoration. So looking at, again, what was the garden, the Edenic reality of what the forging process was supposed to look like. And that's why this episode is called Naked and Not Ashamed, right? Naked and Not Ashamed. That's Genesis 2:25. And just looking at this reality of what was the process of growth and change and improvement for Adam and Eve supposed to look like. Yeah. And hopefully we can get into this and beat this up a little bit and hopefully bring out, again, as we've said over and over again, we have to start at the beginning. We have to see from the beginning what it was intended to be, because that shines a light on how we got where we are through sin, through the fall, and where we're going even further than that in Christ Jesus. Yeah. Right. You had a bunch of thoughts that you jotted down to kick this thing off. So
well done. We are in that place, that 3rd block, and we're not trying to sit here and go through a big course. We're just trying to paint a picture of a biblical worldview to where the average man begins to filter through his life and can see the stages that we're all living through. Like, we are living through a story that God has written. Sometimes it's hard to surrender and believe in that and trust in that. Like, even the imagery of a chessboard, we are not playing the chess game. We are pieces in the chess game that God is playing, right? And we were just reflecting on our weekends and life and the things that God, you plan your day and the Lord interrupts it with something else that you have to deal with, right? We had something come up with one of our children, and we took, as a family, I'm not lying, we took, I want to say, at least 4 hours on Saturday to work through something because it involved all the children, and we had to take the time to do it. But on the backside of that situation, our family, the children and the parents, all of us were closer together than before. And so you look at it and you go, man, I didn't plan that. I didn't want to walk through that. That was painful to address those things in my children. Like, it was not a fun conversation. And yet on the backside, we're closer as a family. And I watched, as the weekend went on, the children loving each other in deeper, more profound ways, because we had walked through this, and it was a unique, holy moment that our family had to walk through, right? Mm-hmm. And that was God planned, not something that we prepared. Mm-hmm. And so if you can get to a place to where you have a worldview that is biblical, you can begin to identify where you're at, what your children are living through, the stages of life that your kids are going through, in proportion to whatever task that you're on, whether it be your job, your home life, fatherhood, parenting, husbandry, all of those things. You can kind of see, all right, what was God's intent? Where's me and my failures? How does Jesus rescue this moment? And how do I do it rightly according to him, right? Mm-hmm. If you can get that, I promise you, man, it will strip the pride. It will allow you to humble yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because we have to often look at this whole process, even what we're going to get into, is looking in the mirror, realizing we're not as pretty as we want to be. we don't do it as good as we want. And the reason is because when we're self-centered and when we're self-focused and we're self-driven, we fail. That's been the course for mankind from the very beginning, from Adam on. Like, that's what's never new under the sun, is that man in his own way fails. And then if you can let Christ come in, he can heal, restore, redeem, and pull you out of that and teach you to walk in the light.
Mm-hmm.
Is that fair?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about, it's this block, this 4-part block that we call forging. And you've probably heard us talk about it in the past. It's really other language for it would be sanctification. You might use the word coaching or mentoring. All of this, when you look at the people, all of our life is under this reality constantly. In fact, all of our life is under all 4 of these realities, all at the same moment, constantly. And so, sanctification just doesn't look like correction, like a punitive thing, like beating somebody into moral behavior. It can look like coaching. It can look like mentoring. It could look like just follow me, like an exemplary example. It can look like cooking at the stove with your child and teaching them how to do things faithfully and not cheat their way through something. It can look like a lot of things. It can look like weed whacking and mowing the yard with your boy. It can look like a lot of things, but it's happening all the time, right? And so what I wanted to talk about today, Justin, with this is the reality that sanctification, that process, often we can look at it like it's separated from the larger relationship. I want to put it in a narrative to where we understand that sanctification, the purpose of sanctification is relational. And from that, moral change happens.
Yeah, and that's part of the thought process behind the title of the episode, kind of the anchoring in that verse in Genesis 2, that they were both naked and not ashamed. And there's many reasons, there's many purposes given to why they were naked when they were born. Well, there was no sin, and they were pure, and they were innocent, and there's truth to all of that. But sometimes it's not this answer is right and this answer is wrong. It's this answer is right and this is right and this is right. That there's shades and nuances to it. And so part of it, yes, is that there was no need for protection. There was no shame because of sin. But also there's the reality that we were talking about in the last episode, just briefly mentioned, that they were created in a state of innocence and trust with God, right? That they were born although Adam was a grown man, that he was formed in this infant stage, this youthful stage where everything that he was knowing and learning and growing in was a given reality for him, that he was born being told, this is who I am as your creator, this is who you are as my creation, and this is how you are to live. And so in that, I think it would be wrong to assume that Adam would never have needed guidance and direction and coaching. We can say that Adam would never have sinned. Sin is actually turning and facing the other way and going against God's revealed will.
Difference in that versus making a mistake.
Yeah, than making a mistake and learning. But in that learning, the design was for it not to be a breach of his identity and who he was before God, that they were able to live naked and not ashamed of the way God would be forming them and shaping them all. And again, as you were pointing out that before I started speaking about that sanctification is all for the sake of relationship, both when you make a mistake towards your wife, it's not just you don't make that mistake again. It's now don't commit sin against your wife now. It's for the sake of that relationship. And ultimately, it's for the sake of our relationship with God, that we would have deeper fellowship and union and communion with God by his Spirit, by becoming more like Christ, who was the ultimate sanctified one, who was the ultimate set apart one, who walked and grew in wisdom and stature with men and with God, who grew in obedience and was surely directed by God, was surely taught and coached by his Father, but not because he had turned about face and sinned against God, but because he grew like a man, the humanity of Jesus Christ. And so in that, the naked and not ashamed, the innocence was an innocence that didn't view the correction and coaching of the Father as punishment or as an indictment against an identity, but as a necessary and natural part of the life of someone who is not God.
Yeah.
Right. Who does not know all things, is not omnipotent, omnipresent, and all powerful and omniscient.
So to touch on this story, naked and not ashamed, Adam and Eve, both of them naked before each other, and also in the context, naked before God. Mm-hmm. Not ashamed before each other, not ashamed before God.
Sure.
And not just physically naked, but you could say that all of their life had been exposed. There was nothing that they had hidden from one another and tried to hide from God, right? And so that is the place, and just to kind of give see this played out, when you see Christ respond to the Father in the Gospels, there is so much content given to, I only do what I see my Father do, and I only say what I hear my Father say, right? There's so much content to Christ and his relationship to the Father and him walking this, in some ways you could say naked and not ashamed, reality out before the Father. He's not fighting the will of the Father. He's not fighting what God has for him. He's wanting to stay in that relational place to where he is, in a sense, one with the Father, following him in his shadow, right? Mm-hmm. Is that fair? Like a son should be to a father, like he wants to be. You know, you can see this with a little kid when he's innocent, when he's enjoying life, a child. He wants to be right on the father's hip, going about adventure all day long with dad, right? And it's only when the breach of the relationship happens that you see a child turn and kind of drift into a corner, right? That hide and get away and get alone because he knows that he's broken the relationship. It's not just that I have morally failed. I mean, think of it this way. When you get pulled over by an officer for a traffic violation of any kind, we all fall at this. We all find ourselves speeding when we shouldn't be. We all find ourselves breaking in small ways, little traffic laws. But the real weight of it comes when you have to look in the eye of an officer and he looks at you and he says, you've failed. And all of a sudden the weight of this is huge. Why? Because the relationship has entered into the room. And now you've failed him. You failed your family. You got to go home with this $200, $300, $400, $500 ticket. You got to present to your wife. Now the real weight of this, and so I just don't want to strip the relational side from sanctification, because at its root, I would say sanctification is all about who is Lord, who is God. Is God God, or have I taken on my own autonomy, my own independence, and I'm doing what I want? And that's what, Adam and Eve, when they begin to drift, it's because they stop following and start following somebody else. We're all followers. It's just a question of who are you following, right? And so that's kind of the root of this. We're going to go into it for the next 3 parts. We'll talk about how, what it means to follow the wrong examples, the wrong people in the coming seasons, how to get that right and start following Christ and what that looks like. But just so you know, you were created to be in the shadow of God and to walk with him as he being the Father and you being the Son. Your life is meant to be lived out in a way of training in his image.
And just to kind of, I'm quiet because it's difficult for me not to go into the next 3 parts of this all at once.
Can't go there yet.
And that's why I'm trying to stay quiet with it. But what I want to kind of paint a picture for us and just kind of bring back to the forefront is the forging process. There was an original design for it. And that was just relationship with God, maturing with God, just like as a father would correct a son. It didn't attack our identity. We weren't sinning in the original design how we should have, and we would have matured with him and grown with him and managed well with him. That was the idea. And then we'll get into in the next episode or 2 how we fell and why it needs redeemed and how Christ redeemed it and what that looks like as we walk our life out with Christ in the forging process, because we need to understand the original design of how he created it, which is life and maturing with him. How we screwed it up. Okay, now I understand why that there's this inner turmoil. I'm trying to figure out what's good, what's right, how do I do it? And then as I'm walking it out, why I'm defaulting going the other way, and God's maturing me. He's refining me. I'm stepping into my calling, but then I'm tempted to chase after, would you say Hezekiah? It was wonderfully helped, and then he became strong. He became proud.
Yeah.
Uzziah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this idea of like, as you mature in one area, you step into another area where you're being forged, you're being refined, you're being tested. Some of it's of your own volition, but the idea that like there was an original design for this, we need to understand what that is. And then we'll get into how we screwed it up and how Christ restored it and how do we walk in it. But the idea that there was a relationship established from the beginning and that we were young, we were new. Adam and Eve were created. They were going to need to learn and mature in areas. And whenever God was going to correct them before they sinned, they wouldn't have felt shame. They wouldn't have been condemned. It just would have been a dad offering correction and then maturing and be like, all right, yeah, good point.
Let's get to the brass tacks of this. Imagine being able to live your life out radically exposed. Everything that you are, every thought, every deed, everything that you've done, radically exposed before a Father that just unconditionally loves you. He's already paid for every one of those offenses. And he's here just to lead you and love you and guide you so that way you live correctly, you live rightly in the image that you were always meant to be. If you can get to that paradigm, the freedom that's in that, just the freedom, when you can finish your day and lay down next to your wife and go, hey, I need help when it maybe comes to this area of finances. I need help when it comes to this area of training the kids. In that context, I need help, and not in the context of I'm doing this wrong. You're doing that. Do you see the difference?
Yeah.
You're failing here.
Yeah.
When you can get to the place to where you just realize, all right, I have to grow in godliness over here. It's really freeing. It can be the kind of thing that causes rapid growth in your life rather than that slow kind of fearful.
Yeah, it's freeing because it's not attached to your identity. It's not attached to your value. You understand that I could suck at something. Like if we go build a house, y'all are going to have to babysit me for a while. Like I'm not an idiot with tools, but I'm not going to be able to carry my weight. But like to me, I can go be like, hey, I haven't done this before. And I'm not like, I'm less of a man and what, like y'all make fun of me, whatever. And we'll move on. But like to understand that concept in all of your life, like you're going to be a dad one day.
In all of your life.
And you're going to suck at being a dad.
Dude.
But if you're submitted to God and you're one with your wife and you're trying to do these things, he's going to correct you. You're going to be a terrible grandfather because you're going to try to be a dad, but you're not. You're a grandfather now. Like there's all these different layers of it, and you're going to be bad at it until you sit time in here. You're humble before him. But we have to get his original design of it. And if you understand the original design, then the fall, and then the redemption piece, and then it starts to make sense. Like when you're in the forging process, when I'm in a process that God's working on me in, or I can see it and read, I'm like, ooh, I know where that's going. I know the original design. I know sin has crept in. I know what Reed is struggling with or what I'm struggling with. And I know the remedy, the solution to it is in the Bible, and it's God. It's not complex anymore. It's simple what needs done. The difficult part is walking it out, but I have the capability to walk it out because it's not who I am.
Yeah.
Who I am as a son.
It's sealed.
I'm more than a conqueror. I'm a co-heir with Christ. It's like all of that. It's like, all right, cool. So if there's something that is exposed, I'm like, thank you for exposing that. Let's take it and give it to God and get counsel on how to fix it. But if you understand this trajectory and where we started and where we are and what we're working through and maturing in, it helps you diagnose something and deal with it and give it to God versus just wandering around in the dark blind.
Well, it's really like, and I like the kind of the medical analogy, kind of talking about diagnosis and symptom. Like it makes a lot of sense that for a doctor to understand what's wrong with you and the prescription for how to fix what's wrong with you, the base layer of their education is learning how the body works rightly. Like the first thing you need to know about noticing an arm is broken and that an arm to be fixed needs to be casted or splinted or whatever it is. You need to know that you don't walk primarily on your arms. Like You have to, okay. So the purpose of me fixing it is not so that you can get back to walking on your hands. It's to use the arm to pick things up and you have to know the way that the arm was meant to be used, the way that the kidney is meant to function, so that when you diagnose the problem and you prescribe a solution to the problem, it's getting it back to what it was supposed to do originally. And so I think that's what's so crucial when we're analyzing the way things were pre-fall, is because we want to see, okay, what was it supposed to be like, so that we can know then when we are correcting, when we are having the Holy Spirit is diagnosing the ongoing indwelling sin in us, the shortcomings in us, and fixing them, that we know that what they're being fixed back to now in Christ is even greater. And I think, I've been reading a proverb every evening with my oldest son, and we just started back over with Proverbs 1. And the first, the key verse to all the Proverbs 1:7, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. And there's a reality where the beginning of all of this is the fear of the Lord. And the fear of the Lord, in essence, is a right recognition of God and yourself, and who goes where, and the gravity of God's position, right? Like rightly understanding who God is then fuels gaining wisdom, gaining knowledge, being changed. And so for Adam, that initial life that he had pre-fall was one of living in a perpetual fear of the Lord, not in the sense that he was afraid of God, but that he knew what God said in regards to who God was and what God said in regards to who Adam was. And so he was able to be corrected, and he was able to be led and to grow in wisdom, right? Like we talked about before. I don't believe personally that the tree of the knowledge of good and evil was perpetually, forever, always, for all time, going to be withheld from Adam and Eve. That may be a hot take, but God says, I have given you every tree of the garden to eat from. And then he placed a prohibition upon the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We don't know if he was going to say, okay, now you may eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but it's worth at least doing the mental work and thinking through what could have been, that the reason why God withheld that was because he was prolonging this time of learning and innocence, where he's saying, you come, sit at the tree of life, eat of the tree of life, learn from me in this innocent state before you are in need of the knowledge of right and wrong, the knowledge of good and evil, right? Like there was a growth and a reality to what it seems like the way God was going to do things before sin entered. And so there's a level where for us at base layer, what we can glean from this is that in the beginning, God created man to sit before him, understanding God and understanding who he was in light of who God said he was. Yep. And that makes it to where there's no indictment upon that, because there is no alternative. There's no alternative to you love me and I'm made in your image and I'm meant to go and to glorify you and take dominion of your creation. There's no option of, well, I just did that wrong. I guess I'm now condemned. Like condemnation and shame wasn't a possibility. It was only a life of approval. Right. Like it was only, that was solid. Yeah. And I think that started with the fear of the Lord being something that was built into Adam in creation. Yeah. And I would say that you see that modeled out in the structure of the family. I like what you're saying there, because if that reality is true, we should see it somewhere in life lived out. And in the home, there's all kinds of offense that takes place, lying, stealing, all that kind of stuff. But there's not a final punitive judgment that sends a 7-year-old off to prison and jail. And that final judgment. What you get in the family is actually what you want in a healthy family, is parents with unconditional love for the child that are the ones covering and paying the tab on that true offense and working through all the details of it, right? And hopefully, under the grace of unconditional love, raising their children up to learn how to walk out of love into the image of their parents. And hopefully that image is one that's reflecting the Father. Like you want to be, I just heard
this little clip. It was a girl that was talking about, for her, the thing that she loved about homeschool the most. And she said, the thing I value the most about that part of that season of my life was that for many kids, they only get, 30 minutes, an hour a day with their parents. I got 6 to 8 hours a day with my mom. And after years of doing this, I got to see the good and the bad in my mother. And I loved where our relationship is at here. And so she knew the input that they had in that, the time that they put into that relationship was the value. And in a home life, the time that you're putting in with Reed, the time that you're putting in with your children, it should be this exchange to where there's unconditional love and then the freedom to learn and grow and be trained, right? Like you want to create that. And I know in my own sin and my own failures as a parent, I get to the place to where I want to be moral correction agents. And what happens is it throws off the whole thing.
But even in that moral correction agents, I like that. If you're bringing it back to a biblical base, what you're doing is discipling, and you're recreating.
Yes.
The next pillar that we're going to get into is reign. Because if I'm in the forging process, and whenever, like, we've had a bunch of new parents around here, and you can just see the child unintentionally refining the mess out of the parents, just making them become unselfish, dying every day for that child. And when you see that, like, you have love and you're working through it, and eventually as a parent, you should mature in that. And then I know for like Reed and Ez, when they got old enough and Ez would take something to Reed, or Reed would take something to Ez, and they're bickering. I'm like, you guys take my stuff every day. Do you hear me bicker? And Reed's like, you broke this. I said, you broke 90 of my things. Like, but you get a chance to display the forging process that took place in your life. You get to show it to them and show like that's what this says, and that's what you need to do. And then eventually it goes into the reign where you're recreating that. But the idea is, you're completely right. It's like, it should be in the household. And that is where it's displayed relationally, lovingly. You're covering a multitude of sins with love, but also the teaching aspect of what's going on. Why are you upset that she took that? Why are you being selfish? Because of the fall. And you can diagnose and really zoom in and explain things.
Yeah, you can't, it's not that you just kind of put your hand over what is right and wrong and ignore it for the sake of peace in the home. That's not it, right?
No way.
John 4, Jesus came and said, there will come a time where they worship in spirit and in truth. And so truth, the standard of what is right and wrong, has to be seen and experienced. And there's a correction that we would get back to that. But if you do that void of the spirit, and when in that context, when it means spirit, for the Christian, that's referring to the regenerative new birth, right? That my heart would be born again, that my mind and my soul would be born again to this reality that I love God, trust God, believe in God. If you have in the home the standard of truth, but you break the relational to where now you just have an adult with a child, and it's not a parent with a child. It's not a father or a son with a daughter or a son. Do you understand what I mean? It's just an authority and then the submissive agent. If that's where it gets, you've lost the ability to actually guide them into truth in a right way. You need that relationship.
Lost their heart.
Yes, you lose their heart. And so this is why, and Danny talks about this all the time. Danny he's paid so much into loving children and the time that he spends with them, loving on them, caring for them, that when it has to come to correction, because he's a karate student, karate instructor, when it has to come to discipline, he's able to do that and it doesn't break the relationship, right? Parents, we have to, you have to invest that time of loving and guiding your children so that way when the standard has to be, when we get back to it.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah, exactly.
And that makes me think about Psalm 103, 13 and 14. As a father shows compassion to his children, so the Lord shows compassion to those who fear him. Yeah. For he knows our frame. He remembers that we are dust. And there's that reality that the way that God created Adam and Eve is that Adam, he knows exactly how he built Adam. He understands. God knows perfectly
what he needs,
how to lead him.
Yeah, that's so good.
Right? He remembers, and he does it compassionately with those who, again, fear him, who rightly recognize who God is and live accordingly.
Yeah.
Right? And there's just that, you can picture that compassionate love that God had for Adam in the garden was because he knows how he's made. And then for us, it's not spoiling anything to talk about that application, the practicality of it is that when we are leading our kids, exactly what both of y'all are talking about is that we should be leading our children compassionately. Because we need to remember that they're made the same way that we are. They're made of the same stuff as us, right? And we should be leading them like the Father was leading Adam in such a way that it's rock solid in our children's eyes that their standing before us does not change when they need correction. I mean, that's something I'm going through a lot with my oldest son right now. It's that he flat out said to my wife, I don't like being corrected.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like being corrected. Now, he wasn't saying it totally in the same way of like, I don't like being disciplined. He was saying it like, I don't like when I'm talking being corrected. That was but he meant, if you really got down to the heart level, he meant, I don't like being told when I'm doing something wrong.
Who of us does?
Yeah, absolutely. And my wife just looked at him and said, and what does a fool hate?
Correction.
What does a fool hate? A fool, and he's like, correction. And he said, so now you're calling me a fool? He's like,
the scripture.
I'm not, the Bible is, like that. But you're not, and you need to act like who you are, not this other person, not this fool. And it's so important for us to recognize that the way God was setting Adam up to be led is the way that we need to set our children up to be led and our wives up to be led. And that's how we need to recognize that God wants to lead us, is in this way of vulnerable trust with God that he is in control because he is good, because he is just, that all his ways are perfect, that he wants what's best for us. That's why sin exists, is not because sin's not bad because I can't remember how it's said. That it's not prohibited because it's bad, or it's not bad because it's prohibited because it's bad, right? Like, He doesn't say don't do it. It's not bad because he says don't do it. He says don't do it because it's bad for you, right? Like this reality that God is always for us and for his glory. And again, as we talked about before, that those two things are connected, that our best brings him the most glory.
Yeah.
And it's good to see in the scriptures the way that God had intended it to be. That just shines so much light on the way that now we should be pointing our children, the people under our care, back to him.
I was just reading Proverbs 16:6. By steadfast love and faithfulness, iniquity is atoned for, and by the fear of the Lord, one turns away from evil. And the little note that I wrote to the side a while back, I said, how do you lead people to fear the Lord? They have to begin to learn about him, just like how a son fears their father. It's time spent.
Yeah.
So that's where we're getting the beginning of this forging process, is understanding how he originally created time to be spent with him and how he would correct us and love on us and mature us. That is the goal. That is the standard, right?
Yeah.
And we messed it up. Jesus came and saved it, and it's redeemed. And we're going to get into all those different layers in the next few episodes. But it's crucial to know how it started, why it fell, how he restored it, and what we are to do with it now.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally freeing if you can come to a reality that God rules and reigns over this world, and he's a loving father, and he wants you to walk in his image, that we would become followers, right? That was Jesus's initial call to his disciples, the very beginning of discipleship. Follow me. That's a submissive call to an authority, right? Follow me. If you can fall in love with that, if you can see that as one of the best commands over your life, follow him. And you can see the value in that, that will kill the independent, proud streak that's in all of us. You can't just fight the pride. You can't fight the independence. You have to actually fall in love with becoming dependent upon the Father and knowing that's the way that this was meant to be. Okay. So, well, we hope that helps. This is the Kavod Family Podcast. Stick with us. We got much more.